Hello everyone around the globe and all of you in the higher dimensions. Feel free to join us here at the Mystical Awakening Studios in Hope Lake, Michigan. This evening we have a very special guest with us who I've had the honor to meet a few years ago. Since then we've had an ongoing, expanding friendship. With each new encounter I realized there was much more than meets the eye with this gentleman. And even today he continues to surprise me, not only with his revelations about himself, but about life and the universe and how it's all connected to music and sound. He is an author, a spiritual intuitive musician who uses the divine science of music in his songs. He is the founder of the philosophical view called the Starboard Quest. He has a new book out, also a new CD. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Jager. Welcome, Mark.
Ahoy. Glad to be here.
Before we get started, I feel like I need to ask you permission to come aboard, because in the beginning of your new book, you invite the readers to come on board with these very special crew members. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm sitting in the captain's quarters right now. And we'll get into those characters a little later. But first, can you tell me how the concept, the Starboard Quest, came into the shipyards of your consciousness? And now that it's all built and ready for its maiden voyage, what does it all mean?
The Starboard Quest is a musical idealism concept in which musicians navigate towards the higher ideals of sound, and in so doing, create a music which attempts to incorporate the higher principles of the Aquarian age to create a new genre called Aquarian music. The concept is epitomized in a symbol. The symbol is that of a ship called the Starboard Quest, which is navigating by celestial navigation towards the constellation Lyra, which is pictured as an eagle ascending, whose chest area is composed of a celestial heart. The passengers and crew members of the ship represent various musical sages who have sought the higher ideals of sound through the ages. So in summary, the ship's journey represents movement towards the higher ideals of sound and music over the centuries. The starry constellation Lyra represents the higher divine ideals of music, and the crew members represent musical sages throughout the ages seeking the higher ideals of music over periods of time.
So let's talk about some of these philosophers and scientists that are sailing with the people on Starboard Quest. People have contributed to the spiritual, scientific dimensions of music. I think our audience will be surprised who some of these people are. So I'm going to throw out a few names, and you tell us how they contributed. How about Pythagoras?
Well, Pythagoras is said to have been able to hear music emanating from the earth and universe others around him could not hear. He said that all of creation is singing praise to their Maker. He said that most people could not hear it because of the illusion of material existence. However, he spoke of a coming day when this hidden music would begin to dawn in the consciousness of certain individuals. And once again, it would begin to be heard as it was in the Golden Age. So the question arises, could it be that this day has come, and that the distant whisper of its melody is beginning to faintly sound in the ears of those who are in tune with it?
Okay, let's talk about Plato a little bit. How has he contributed to music?
Okay, the Greek philosopher Plato was once quoted as saying that in order for a utopian society to be established, it must first be purged of its toxic and unprecedented music. So they had very strict guidelines with which they, let music into their civilization.
Okay, now this is one I didn't know had a musical background. It was Martin Luther, who broke away from the Catholic Church. Tell us about him.
Martin Luther believed in sonic exorcism, that evil entities can be driven away by harmonious music. He also believed, as Pythagoras did, that music was infused into all things and that one day it would be heard again. He believed that music was to be taken away from vile and perverted men and be put back into the hands of those who would do their best to use it correctly. So what we are speaking of is a worldwide musical revolution in which evil music and musicians are overthrown and their toxic music is banished from the earth.
Interesting. Okay, now these are just a few of the people who are on board with Starboard Quest, the crew. Some of the people on there are Kepler, Sir Isaac Newton, and Tesla, just to name a few, and maybe we'll get into some of those a little later. One day you and I were discussing your book, and you said something that I believe a lot of people might not know or have forgotten, and that is, in ancient times, music was not really for entertainment, like most of it is today. Yet it was considered a science and meant to explore our spiritual and intellectual rights. Can you elaborate on this some more?
Yeah, there were many different stages, and in fact entire civilizations, entire groups of people who didn't see music as a frivolous pastime, good for nothing but entertainment.
Right.
They seen it as a sacred science. For example, in ancient China, they believed that music should follow universal law. They believed that any society that began making music which was dissonant and unconnected to the universe, that society would eventually collapse. It would only be a matter of time before the entire empire would deteriorate. They would actually monitor their province's health by monitoring what type of music the people in that province were listening to, and whatever could give a reason. The Greeks had similar beliefs. They only used certain modes for certain purposes. In fact, the majority of the music that you hear on the radio today was against the law in ancient cultures. And ending this little thought here, as recently as John Sebastian Bach, he very much viewed music as divine. When a member of Bach's orchestra was complaining that a piece of music that Bach had written was impossible to play, Bach's response to this man was to ask him something like this: why should I be concerned with what you are capable of playing as a human being when what I am trying to do with music is to communicate with God?
Nice. Very good. When people come into our store here at Mystical Awakenings, I often have music on in the 432 hertz. It's called the angelic vibration, whatever. Can you explain to our audience what the 432 hertz tuning means?
The significance of the 432 hertz tuning is that the ancients even tuned their instruments in ways that were compatible with creation. For instance, their instruments were tuned at 432 hertz rather than 440 hertz, which is a standard concert pitch in the modern day. And in India, the 432 hertz tone is called Saja, which means the father of all others. So among the Sufis, it is said that he who knows this tone knows the secret of the universe. What is significant about the 432 hertz tone and how it is connected to the universe is that, for one, it's connected to the mathematics of the heavenly bodies. Let me give you a few examples. The diameter of the moon is 2,160 miles, which is 432 times 5.
Oh, wow.
The diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles, which is 432,000 times 2. The amount of years that it takes our sun to travel through the 12 signs of the zodiac is 25,920 years, which is 432 times 60.
Oh, wow.
A healthy human heartbeat is 60 times a minute, which is 864,000 beats a day, which is 432,000 times 2. So as you can see, that number shows up a lot in the mathematics of the universe. There's so many examples, it would take volumes probably to write them all out.
It's kind of like everything's divinely tuned to that number, right? Okay, Mark, can you explain some of the conceptual instruments that the people created in the past, what philosophers from the past created them. For example, how about the celestial monotone?
In the 1500s, a man named Robert Flood conceptualized a musical instrument called the celestial monochord. The celestial monochord was an imaginary instrument that stretched all the way from the Earth, through the atmosphere of the Earth, through all the various levels of outer space, up through the various regions of the spiritual beings, up to the highest heaven, where it was tuned. All the planets and levels were of a different note or vibration. The notes were lowest on the Earth and kept getting higher and higher in pitch as the higher you went up the string. And so that was pretty much the celestial monochord.
Nice. What about the cosmic bowl instrument?
Well, that was something that Plato came up with. That was a musical instrument, a conceptual musical instrument, that consisted of 7 bowls that represented the 7 planets. The bowls were attached to a spindle at the center. The larger bowls were at the bottom, and they got smaller as you went up. They believed that the rims of the bowls were the orbits of the planets, and as the planets went around the rims, they were believed to make a note of the musical scale. If you ever ran your finger around the rim of a wine glass, you get the idea.
Right. And who created the ultimate instrument?
That was, I believe, came forth from the Renaissance, and it might have been a composite of a number of different people that came up with that. But in this particular instrument, somewhat similar to the celestial monochord, they had the conductor at the very pinnacle of this. For example, maybe standing on the conductor's podium. Beneath that level were all the different spiritual beings who were actually living musical instruments like angels that were actually, the conductor was in control of them.
Right.
Beneath the angels was the universe. And during the Renaissance, there were certain people that viewed the entire universe as just an instrument that the spiritual beings were playing.
Beautiful.
And going on down to the realm of human beings, it was believed that human beings were actually dancing out the dance of life according to the vibrations of whatever zodiac sign they were born under. And then beneath the human beings, you get down lower and lower to all the different music of the different animals and plants, and probably even down to microbes and right down to atoms.
Right, right. And also in your book, you showed that Benjamin Franklin recreated that cosmic bowl instrument too, right?
I think you might have gotten the idea from that.
Right.
He made the glass harmonica, which I believe you can still see the original rendition of that in the Philadelphia Museum.
I want to play one, so.
Well, that would be great.
Yeah. In your opinion, Mark, some of the modern music problems that need a solution today, but I want to go on record first before you answer that we have a lot of brilliant musicians out there making beautiful music. But what if, a lot of them not so much. What's your take on that?
Well, you may recall that Martin Luther was quoted as saying, harmonious music repels evil. So what do you suppose attracts it? A lot of modern music is disharmonious. It actually attracts evil. Many people bask in that. Most of it's played in 440 Hertz tuning, which is out of keter with the harmonic resonance of the universe. The instrumentation in modern music is many times unbalanced. Many times the drums dominate, the bass guitar dominates, the lyrical content and many times is dark, dismal, and foolish. And the whole reason and motive and intention for performing it in the first place may not be for the enlightenment of your fellow man. Yet at the same time, like you said, you have beauty coming through the music. You have divine gifts in operation. Somebody can take a divine gift that they have and do something funny with it or whatever. So what you have is a mixture of light and darkness. And what has to happen is some type of process has to be gone through in which the light is separated from the dark. So we have, kind of like in an alchemical type way, we've gotten rid of the dark and we've retained and even strengthened the light, the good qualities.
In your book, you explain how music goes through these cycles or reaches extreme high spiritual peaks and very low vibrational periods. Can you explain the musicians of the past that are considered light and darkness in music, and why is this?
People might ask, if we're getting close to the breaking forth of light in music, then why are there so many dark musicians on earth right now who openly proclaim to be dark? Well, in the chemistry of the universe, it's always darkest just before the dawn. In order to understand the light, you must first understand the darkness. How would you ever know what stellar music sounded like unless you had first heard distorted or unprincipled music? The dark musicians had to come forth. They had to first come forth to create a dark background in which the light will be highlighted. The musicians of darkness are actually enhancing the light by reason of their darkness. They are a necessary evil. That's why they have been allowed to continue, to enhance the brightness of those who will do what's right. And going along closely with this is the idea that the Greeks had of three different types of human beings: the animal man, the human man, the divine man. The dark musicians fall into the category of animal man. They cater to the sensuous pleasure of the animal. They have the largest audiences because the majority of the human race may be at the level of animal man. Therefore, their lyrics cater to that level. The music we are speaking of, which is going to come into global dominance, is that which caters to divine man. You see, there's a music which creates, that caters to the lustful nature of beasts, which all of us can act like sometimes. And then there is a music for the contemplation of the gods. And what we are speaking of is universal music, which caters to the God race. And there are fewer people in the God race, or at that level. And the audiences are smaller.
Well, that might be true on this planet, but maybe not so much in the universe, right? I mean, there may be more people out there that are attuned to that higher frequency, and we're just learning it again.
Interesting point.
Yeah, because you had said that, music goes to these peaks and has its renaissance, let's say, and then it goes to a lower peak, and then it goes back up. Do you have any idea of how often this happens? Is there a timeline, or is there something behind it that makes that happen?
I think that's up to the conductor.
Okay, yeah, exactly. I get your point. So, Mark, in your quest to find the magical, spiritual, scientific secrets of music, you have come across some very interesting people who are exploring music in a very different way. Let's run through some of these clips that you have had the honor to meet these cool musicians, and tell us what you think. Your research has led you to a gentleman named Berkeley Walker at Michigan State University. Tell us a little bit about that.
The capacity in which I talked to Berkeley Walker was an unofficial one, and I don't know that he's a musician or not, but he's actually a biologist, and I went to the labs at Michigan State University, and one of the Starboard Quest compositions was played for plants in the lab, and in an uncorroborated experiment, it appeared as if when the composition was being played, the plant began absorbing more light. And this can even be seen by looking at a graph that they sent us, and so it's pretty neat.
So let's take time to look at this clip.
What we'll do is these leaves up at the top are the most active photosynthetically. And so I look for kind of the first one that's folded all the way over and still is getting lots of light. So I like this one right here. Plus it happens to be about the right size. And first I can erase this up a little bit. You don't want to move this around once you plant the leaf on, because then it's not really too happy.
So I believe the second clip we're going to run is by a gentleman named Tom Wall, and this is amazing. Mark, do you have something to say about this before we run it?
Well, Tom Wall hooks up a special machine to plants, and which registers some information coming off the plants, and the plants are actually making music, and then Tom plays music with the plants.
This is incredible. Let's roll that clip.
Through the centuries, some have insisted that the music of the spheres came to Earth on ghostly whispers of astral light. The flowers and plants on Earth received the light and joined in the universal symphony. Biologist and musician Tom Wall studies the interaction between musical frequencies and botany life. Through his musical interactions with the plants, he has come more fully to understand the musical connections between all living things and what the ancients might have considered a universal orchestra.
Well, it turns out the forest has birthed a new genre of music, and that genre of music is called organoleptic music. Now, organoleptic music is music that is generated by plants through the aid of an electronic device that takes electrodes, and you hook one up to the root, one up to the leaf, and then through that, the electromagnetic variations of the plant are registered, and then through the wave pattern they can take from that, they can assign musical notes, and then from those musical notes, we hear music. So what we have here is the Music of the Plants device. Now this is the device that registers the electromagnetic variations of the plant and converts it into music. And then through that we have an auxiliary cord that goes out and goes into one of our speakers so you can hear it in real time. Now we'll turn it up and we'll see what the plant has to say. This is the cedar we just plugged in. You'll hear them start playing, they'll be pretty ambient, pretty quiet. But then, most of the time when you start playing along with them, they get real excited and they start playing right along with you. So it's really interesting to see how this works. But it seems that they enjoy the accompaniment of people playing along, and that's part of the guise of the organoleptic genre, is that humans and plants play music together. But it's an improv style because clearly you can never predict what a plant's actually going to do, right? I mean, it's a plant.
Tom has a very deep understanding of the elements surrounding him as we walk on his family's property where he grew up as a child exploring.
As I've gone through all this, I've started to realize that I think space is a series of somatics, the sound and the silence, and then obviously through that, then we can have the hydrogen and the oxygen, all that come together, and we have water, and then water feeds life, but everything living breathes for each other and with each other and exists with each other, and we are all on the same ecosystem, and we all work together to make this what it is. No matter what we want to believe, that's the truth.
Tom also plays in the band he founded called Cosmic Knot. He and the band have been recording music with plants in the studio. Tom and his friend Tony have taken this concept further by taking impulses from the plants and triggering a 3D projected light show that Tom performs with. Tom Wall has a lot to teach us with this new music genre called organoleptic. He has shown us the euphoric excellence of living in harmony with botany life. Plants seem very happy to live in harmony with us. Perhaps it's up to us to learn to live in harmony with them.
Now Now this next clip is very near and dear to my heart because you know my wife and I and our dear friend Mike Smith put on the Michigan UFO Contact Convention. And what this guy is doing is absolutely fantastic. And I'll let the clip talk for itself. Before we run it, his name is John Shepard. Tell us a little about this.
Well, John built a 2-story transmitter to play music for aliens. For years, he had a radio station that would actually have to take FCC breaks and everything. It's a licensed radio station where all he did was broadcast music to outer space for aliens.
Fascinating. Let's run that clip.
There seems to be within man a universal musical code, as if it is a higher language written into the very fabric of our DNA. Certain tones and frequencies evoke specific feelings and emotions within human beings. Is it possible that there are other beings in space who respond to this same universal symphonic language? John Shepard of Kewadin, Michigan, believes it's possible. He has broadcasted musical signals out into space for decades, attempting to communicate with advanced intelligences. So, John, where did this all begin?
It began when my early years and my fascination with electricity and the unknown. For the unknown is a mystery to be solved. I always kind of considered myself an explorer. I'd be looking for deeper meanings in things and why they are what they are.
There's no doubt that John has a fascination with extraterrestrials.
The thing about ETs for me is I feel like there's an incredible knowledge base out there. Why, shouldn't we communicate with them? Why shouldn't we study them? Why shouldn't they share ideas with us or us with them? We could advance so fast, so far.
John's electronic projects started growing more and more. As they started to take over his grandparents' home, they encouraged John in his endeavors.
One of the things that we did was I set up a 150-watt vertical marker beacon transmitter. We called it for short VMB. And the device was designed to send out binary tone codes, 16 different notes that were adjustable, and they would run 24 hours a day, these tones, and they'd be sent out electronically on the ULF band into the ionosphere to try to home these extraterrestrial devices or beings in. Then there was this one interesting incident between Shish Mountain and Shanty Creek near a power substation that fed power to these 2 resorts. Guy driving his pickup truck down the hill, and when he got partway down that hill, his truck stopped immediately, stalled out, the power went out, his lights, everything. And he described what he thought was an object like a spherical object with a ring around it, like Saturn, a planet. He might have been there 3 or 4 minutes. He looked up and it was just begin to lift up and fly away. And when it did, he was able to restart the truck. That's from the Sheriff's Department interviewer description that I actually heard and saw the written notes on.
With the help of his grandparents, John had developed a completely new studio. The studio was 42 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 2 stories high.
I built this huge project, a research facility, and we called it Project STRAT, Special Telemetry Research and Tracking. That was the acronym for the operation as a whole. And it included the transmitting of music, it included the searching and detection of unidentified aerial phenomena, and it involved all that kind of thing, as well as connecting with people who have maybe seen unidentified flying objects, and discussing it and writing it down, making notes, recording these reports. So it was kind of an all-in effort to try to evaluate this phenomena that kept coming into our space, into our time.
John had started gaining attention from many news outlets.
People who were in the news business or in newspapers or what have you, the media, became interested because one would tell a story and the media would pick up on it. So there'd be this little flurry of activity. Then what got interesting is later on, when all this was kind of circulating in the national stage, I even got to appear on Joan Rivers, which was kind of fun. And there were numerous other things, documentaries, and now of course this Netflix thing, and many things in between. I can't even remember them all.
It is recommended that you watch the Netflix original documentary entitled John Was Trying to Contact Aliens, directed by Matthew Killip. There you will learn much more about John's personal life.
And this is Project Starboard Station 1, which is broadcasting to you from beautiful northwestern Michigan. And closing out our program tonight is a little music from Stephen Halpern. He's titled Black Rock. One of the things I'm working on now is we're setting up a studio here. Well, I've had a studio most of my life of one form or another, but this is more of the kind of studio you would broadcast programming from, music programs, kind of like we did at Project Strat or Station 1. But now we're doing it in the form of podcasts. That's what we're just getting into. I'm also recording a bunch of music productions from my own works. So I'm combining these ideas as well as playlists from other musicians and artists who do similar things. So music is a great medium for expressing that, sharing that, opening that realm up to the mind, to the intellect. Music is a key, and so is sound.
John Shepard continues on his pursuit of the unknown. I had a fascinating time visiting John in his studio. His love for music, sound, and the unexplained resonates soundly with all of us.
So, what are some of the solutions for some of our modern day music, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, what you have with modern music is that you have a mixture. You have both good and bad. Back in the days when they burned records and things like that, they did that for a reason, and they probably had some good points. But also, I believe they threw out the baby with the bathwater because there's also good mixed in there. Right. So what needs to be done with modern music is that it needs to be ran through a process which will remove the darkness and strengthen and enhance the light. I'd like to show you a symbolic illustration to show you what could be done in a process of music chemistry to remove darkness and the light.
You know, in my opinion, it's really not the musicians all the time. I think the people who run music, some of the people that run the music industry, don't allow musicians to be creative. You know, they have too much control, and they decide what's going to be played in mainstream, music. And unfortunately, there's a lot of musicians out there that don't get heard, and because they're not playing what they want. So I see this improving, and I see this changing. And during the 60s, they had good people in the music business, but somewhere along the line it changed. I agree with you. Like I said, not all musicians. It's just there's a lot of beautiful music out there, but I think it could be much better.
Well, one of the ways of doing that is what I call musical alchemy, where you take the music and you run it through a 7-step process, which is using some of the same terms for symbolic purposes as what was used to turn base metals into gold when the alchemists used to do that type of thing.
Right.
So there's a whole chart in the book that will show you these 7 steps, but they're not an actual process that's being done. It's just kind of worded in that way so you kind of understand what's going on with that.
Yeah, your book really touches on the number 7. Of course, there's 7 notes in a scale, and the 8th one is repeating the note. So you have a lot of good examples in there how 7 is very sacred when it comes to music and sound.
Well, I have another thing for once music has been ran through this chemistry process that I explained in the book. there's another process, another descriptive tool that I call the 8-level pyramid of sound. But 7 levels of it are building the thing up. It's incorporating beneficial frequencies. And then on top of that, you build with Pythagorean tuning. You have, rhythms that are compatible with the universe. You have natural sounds. And there's a graph of that, too, in the book that kind of explains that process. And here it is right here on the screen for you now.
Right. The thing I think your book really talks about is, you talked about it briefly, but how everything makes music. Even the planets make music. And Kepler talked about that, right, in the music of the spheres. And I just think it's amazing that everything emits a frequency and a sound. And even though we can't hear it with our human ear, instruments pick it up. And like you said, Pythagoras could hear it, and other people could hear it, but most people can't. But it's just so beautiful. The universe is singing. That's what I'm saying. And once we tap into that and we hear the beautiful music of the universe, I think music's going to change forever. Mark, can you tell us how the Starboard Quest musical compositions have gone beyond just strictly musical compositions?
Sure. The Starboard Quest compositions all have special elements placed in them. There are special timings, rhythms, pulses, and tunings placed into the recordings. These are symbolic microcosms of things going on in the universe. But an important point to remember is that we don't want people to think that what is being claimed is that the Starboard Quest compositions are some full manifestation of the coming epiphany of whatever. What they are is they're an experiment. They're subtle hints, cryptic messages, as if the barriers between the dimensions are slowly deteriorating, and streams of light and sound are beginning to shine through the darkened corners of the world and make their way into compositions.
Okay, can you give us some examples of some of these elements that go into the Starboard Quest music that is unparalleled from other music?
Well, one that comes to mind right off the bat is the Symphony of Sonic Ascent. The song is an epic journey from the depths of the sea up to the level of the surface of the sea, up through the atmosphere, the higher up into the atmospheres, up into space, and then to the very gates of heaven itself. And what has been done with this composition is, for instance, when you are starting out in the bottom of the ocean, there's sonar blips for the rhythm. There's the human heartbeat is there as a rhythm. You continue to ascend up through the sea. There's whales. You splash through to the surface. Then you're on the Sea of Time. There's waves are part of the rhythm for this section of the song. You continue to go on, and it builds up into horsehoof beats, and then you're off, and you're heading up into the atmospheres of the earth, and the rhythm that is used there are wing flaps, and you're going up, 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 and even the birds that are in there, they're placed within the composition to where you hear the lowest flying birds sounding first until one of the highest flying birds is the eagle, and that's the last bird you hear in the composition within the music. And then you break through and you're into outer space, and we've got actually the rhythm of 2 pulsars that I believe NASA recorded interfused with one another, and you're going up through space, and then you're right up into the heavens, and there's choirs and all kinds of really euphoric, blissful type sounds. So we try to incorporate all these natural sounds and imageries into the compositions.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And I enjoy that song very much. Is there maybe one more you want to just tell us that you might have used something like The Forest Told a Secret, or?
Well, the Forest Told a Secret, we use cicadas, part of the rhythm.
Right.
The main rhythm for the piece is the drumming of a woodpecker.
Oh, wow.
A bearded woodpecker.
Yeah.
You keep going on. There's frogs at one point doing bass, and just all kinds of different things like that.
Very
crickets singing.
Yeah. I love it.
Kind of like bringing to mind the idea of the music that is one day to further break into the people's consciousness. But all we can do right now is do little symbolic representations in the recordings, because what's coming that we're speaking of is far beyond anything that we're probably capable of doing right at this point.
Yeah, I got you there.
It's just a hint towards it, you know.
Yes, very nice. And you'll enjoy the music of Starboard Quest, trust me. Mark, I want to thank you for being such a wonderful guest this first hour, because don't go away. We have another hour where you can ask Mark some questions on chat and find out many more interesting things about this gentleman that he does. So as we leave for the break, I want to play some music from Starboard Quest, one of my favorites that I played at the UFO Contact Convention. The song is called Deep Calls to Deep, and after the song, we'll be right back. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Hundreds of eyewitnesses observed a series of strange lights over Lake
Thank you.